One of the things that I meant to put in that opening talk or brief blurb I gave this morning was one of the highlights that I think for this conference is Pope Paul VI said that people of science need to pool their efforts. And one of the things with CANFP that we've always wanted to be very supportive of all methods, and where we need to go in the future is we all have different strengths. We need to pool those efforts. There's so much work to be done. And each model brings unique jewels, special gems. And today we have 4 of the methods with some fabulous people that are going to talk about that method. It's going to be a little bit rapid fire. Each of them gets 10 minutes to talk about their method, because what we really want is then some Q&A and some good discussion to follow. So you can be thinking of your questions while they're talking. So we're going to start with Walt and Pam Birdsall. They're from Napa, California. They've been a teaching couple for the Couple to Couple League since 2010. They've been married 38 years, but tomorrow is their 39th anniversary. So if we can give them a... This little bird told me. And they've worked in marriage ministries for over 25 years. So if I can invite both of you up here to give us the, and again, we've been given kind of an outline of quickly what it is for a woman learning through the method, and possibly what would it be like to be a teacher in the method.
Good morning.
Good morning. The Couple to Couple League was founded in 1971 in response to really Article 26 in Humanae Vitae, which I was just going to read. It's very short. But in this article, Paul VI says, among the fruits that result from a generous effort of fidelity to the divine law, one of the most precious is that married couples themselves, not infrequently, feel the desire to communicate their experience to others. Thus, a new and most noteworthy form of the apostolate of like to like comes to be included in the vast field of the vocation of the laity. It is married couples themselves who become apostles and guides to other married couples. Among so many forms of apostolate, this is assuredly one of those that seem most opportune today. So, as indicated, the Couple to Couple League's approach is married couples teaching married or engaged couples the method.
The method consists of, it's called the symptothermal method. It uses temperature and mucus, or mucus, temperature, and the cervix sign to define the fertile and infertile times of the cycle. Couples learn the method either live on site with a teacher, or we have live online classes, or self-paced, where there's a teaching couple that is their mentor couple. They can contact us if they have questions. The classes consist of 3 sessions, approximately 2 hours in length. They're spaced 1 month apart to allow the woman time to chart, and then they come back to the next class and we review her charts and, you know, help them out with any, and in the meantime, they can contact us with questions if they have them. We offer a basic method class that's $135. And then we have a postpartum and premenopause class that is $75. In addition to teaching the method for identifying the signs of fertility, we also teach the anatomy and physiology behind it, but also the theological aspects of theology of the body. So there's a real Catholic component to what we do.
The teacher training is online and self-paced. It's pretty lengthy, and you do have access to you do have access to the Couple to Couple League. They call it Couple to Couple League Central for support and assistance as you go through the training, and there's exams that you take for each section. So it can take a while They do give you a deadline, so you have to encourage you to continue on and not just let it go on for months and months and indefinitely. But it does take a bit of effort. There's no fee for it, and all the teachers teach as volunteers. And we use we use paper charts for charting, or there is an app called Cycle Pro Go that can be used to electronically chart, and it's also a means of, you can use that to communicate with the teaching couple or the CCL Central for chart interpretation and assistance.
You're keeping us on track. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, and again, we're going to go right down. So the next one is Diane Daly. She's a wife, mother, and grandmother. She's a registered nurse and co-developer of the Creighton model system of fertility care. And she's director of the St. Louis Archdiocesan Office of NFP, and she's a faculty member of the Pope Paul VI Institute Educational Program. And she's been one of my heroes growing up since I learned my EP under Diane Daly.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here to be at this Humanae Vitae conference to talk about Creighton Model System. And Creighton Model System is a system that teaches couples, obviously about their combined fertility, to avoid or to achieve pregnancy, but it also empowers women to be partners with their health care. Through tracking their external biomarkers such as mucus discharges, bleeding patterns, and learning the structure of the menstrual cycle. So it's actually a medical model that's based on many years of research. It began at St. Louis University, right in St. Louis. Had we all stayed there, it might have been called the St. Louis University method. But the main director moved to Creighton University, and it did become the Creighton system of fertility care. We were based on the Billings ovulation method from the very beginning. It was foundational to our work. And what we were trying to do was also answer the call of Humanae Vitae for men and women of science and healthcare to reach out to people and work in the science to help people live this teaching in perhaps a more effective way. And then through the years, we were propelled by St. Pope John Paul II, Theology of the Body, and continued the department in St. Louis for about a year, and then the Hilders and a few others moved to Omaha, Nebraska. They developed the Pope Paul VI Institute in Omaha, Nebraska in 1985, and that is really the hub of the research of the Creighton model system worldwide. The hallmark of Creighton model system is the standardization. In 1976, when we began, we found that women were looking for a vocabulary to be able to communicate with us the actual changes in their body. So we also found that the teaching was dependent on who the teacher was who was teaching. So in 1976, we established a standardized service delivery model so that every person would have equal access to the information. We developed standardized terminology we now call the language of the woman's body, developed a picture dictionary to assist people with a visual so that they could express the discharges they were seeing in a common language, developed a standardized follow-up system, a 32-page follow-up form, evaluations of pregnancies, and those have been published in several different locations, but a meta-analysis in 1998 and an ongoing SABA study now, which is finding the method to be very effective, of course. The foundation of Creighton Model System led to the medical science of nanotechnology. Our service is done, this is another hallmark of Creighton Model, it's all private, except for our individual group session. There may be a group introductory session or a private one. And after that, all of our teaching is one-on-one with the couple and the provider or with the woman and the provider. We recommend 8 follow-ups within the first year. They are about 1 hour in length. We begin with the basic method instructions and the basic anatomy and so on. and basic case management, and then we move to the more advanced through those follow-ups. Our documentation is on that follow-up form, and it works as a checklist, an assessment tool, and a documentation so that we don't forget anything of this important standardized approach. In terms of the method, we're teaching the anatomy and physiology and biology and system, but we're also teaching the SPICE system of sexual integration. And that includes this, it's an acronym for spiritual, physical, intellectual, communicative, and creative and emotional aspects of our sexuality. Our teachers, we began a standardized teacher training program in 1978. It's a 13-month education program accredited by the American Academy of Fertility Care Professionals. Those people who continue that program are able to become certified through that same organization. The cost of our service varies. We don't have a standardized cost. It depends on the education program, and then for the providers, it is their own decision about what they will charge clients. In terms of our educational program, we have 20 programs throughout 6 continents. Our location of teaching is a variety of places. My own personal practice is in Mercy Hospital, St. Louis, a department of the hospital. There are programs like that. There are diocesan programs. There are independent programs. There are church-based programs. So people teach in a variety of locations. The long-distance follow-up takes place through electronic media for people who cannot come to us in person, but the personal approach is really something that is very dear to us, and we want to really maintain that as much as we can. However, again, in St. Louis, we have Mercy WebEx, which is HIPAA compliant, confidential, and we can reach out to people around the country and nation and even the world by providing our services in that way, and we do that also. The thing that people wonder is it only for America? It is actually in 22 languages translated now. And everybody wants to know about an app. And we do have a Creighton model app that is just being announced. And the Creighton model app is an integration of further development of the research of the Creighton model system. And it partners with the follow-up and with the individual provider. We have quality control, and I don't think there's time to really go into figures, but part of our quality control is an evaluation at the time of our introductory session, our teacher evaluation, our materials evaluation, and these are done with all in the Creighton model system. And we're pleased that those evaluations are, they're very high, and people are very appreciative of the one-on-one conferences and the ability to have that personalized care. I brought a little handout, a little booklet that we developed a couple of years ago called The Paradigm Shift in Family Planning, and I have several of those here if anybody would like that. It gives a much fuller explanation of Creighton model system.
You have a few more minutes.
Oh, I have a couple more minutes? I don't know what to say now, so thank you.
Maybe I gave everyone a little too much pressure. You guys are doing great. We're going to have time for a lot more comments. All right, so my next one is Casey Schnittker. She's a certified NFP instructor and the executive director of thank you. That's better. Let me start over. Since we are being recorded so others can hear us as well. Casey Schnittker is a certified NFP instructor, and she's the executive director of the Family of the Americas Foundation. She's passionate about sharing the church's teaching on marriage and has developed a simple and effective way for instructors to promote Humanae Vitae and NFP. So I look forward to hearing that. I think the others are finding it easier just to hold, or do you want it in here? What would you prefer?
So does it go higher? Let's keep track of time here.
I will.
You pinch me if I go over?
You got it.
All right. Okay, so very pleased to be here to talk about Family of the Americas Foundation and our work with sharing the beautiful truths of the church's teachings on marriage and really about chastity, because that's what it's all about. Chastity inside of marriage, chastity outside of marriage, and that's what the bottom line is. Our materials are in over 23 languages, and we have teachers in 100 countries. It's a very simple method. Mercedes Wilson, our president, has a particular genius for making things really simple. And so our book, Love and Fertility, is written in such a way that a couple could learn it just from reading the book without an instructor. Why are we training instructors? Because people often don't have the confidence to embrace fertility awareness or natural family planning because they're terrified of having babies. You know, the disconnect of the baby from that ultimate act of love in marriage has really built this artificial terror, and it's really disconnected us so much from our bodies that we don't even trust our bodies. So it really helps to have an instructor to accompany the couple. And we have this new encyclical, Amoris Laetitia, and I've been talking to different instructors and other NFP people and priests. What are we really doing as NFP instructors and NFP organizations? We're accompanying people from where they are, which is mostly influenced by the world and its view of things, to where they need to be, which is open to life. Open to life. I have 7 children. My oldest is 26, and my youngest is 3. I had my last baby at 47, which is very, yes. And you don't have to, and I always teach this, you do not have to artificially cut your fertility off at a certain age. People are really under the impression that once they turn 35, that it's wrong to have another baby. But I always ask people, when, since time immemorial, since the beginning, and you're gonna have to answer this before I can go on, did couples stop having their children? Everybody knows the answer to this in this room. When? What is that called? Yes, thank you. You would not believe the answers that I get to that. Oftentimes it's never. Never? No, they never did. I'm like, no, you have to. God opens the door and God shuts it. We do not have to shut it ourselves. And that's such an inspiring message. So, and why do I have 7 children? It scares people when I say I have 7 children. We don't have 7 children because natural family planning doesn't work to plan your family. Natural family planning, the different methods, are the most effective ways to plan a family. We have 7 children because the connection to the baby in that ultimate act of love that we share as a married couple, the marital embrace, changed the way we saw the children we had, and what a gift that was. And it changed the way we saw our future children. So it would just made us want to have more children. And that's what we need. Another thing that we're doing at Family of the Americas is really trying to share the emergency of the demographic catastrophe that we're in, because couples are stopping having, they're not having larger families anymore. And it's causing a lot of problems in our societies throughout the world. It's really an emergency. So so let me just go back to what they really want us to talk about, and then I'll talk about whatever I want to. I just want to make sure I meet the basic thing here, though. All right, so with the ovulation method, how do you learn? We have instructors, and instructors do things differently according to where they live. It really depends on the culture, how they teach. Sometimes it's through a public hospital with 2 sheets of paper and a simple class. I mean, you can learn the method in 20 minutes. It's very simple. And through teaching the poor, Mercedes and Family of the Americas have learned how to communicate these simple, scientific, beautiful truths very, very clearly and simply. And we use pictures. We use a lot of pictures to help people understand, because we have taught many poor and illiterate throughout the world. Mother Teresa commissioned Mercedes Wilson to teach her sisters throughout the world. And we learned a lot from the poor. We learned so much teaching them. So our materials are very simple. We also have a new app that has been developed, which is a revolutionary app because it's a teaching app. And it's only $4.99 one time. And it teaches a person how to achieve or postpone pregnancy using the ovulation method. So how women observe. The ovulation method is based on observing one of the signs that is necessary for conception. You need 3 things to conceive a baby. From the man, what do you need? Right. Can conception happen anywhere, anyhow, without it? No. Impossible. Okay? From the woman, what do you need? Yeah. Can you have conception happen anywhere, anyhow, without an egg? No. There's one more thing that's as essential and as the sperm and as the egg. Do you know what it is? Right. It's the cervical secretion that a woman produces around the time of ovulation. If a woman learns to recognize that secretion, she learns to understand its significance and how to act around it. A couple can plan their family very effectively and simply. Another thing, so cost, how long does it take to learn the method? It really depends on the circumstances that a couple is in. If a woman is coming off of hormonal steroidal contraceptives, her body is going to go a little wacky for a while, and we always recommend that she take nutritional supplements that really helps her fertility to return and her signs to be more clear. So it can take up to 5 months in that case, but usually it takes about 3 months for a woman to really get it down. So for her, just in a normal circumstance, to learn to recognize the pattern in her body. The cost also really depends. When I teach a couple, it's $100, and that covers 2 classroom sessions. I do an intro session, and then I do a final classroom session. And then in between are follow-ups. And so that includes the 2 classroom sessions, which for me, it's about 6 hours of instruction because I'm teaching a lot of engaged couples. And so teaching engaged couples, I don't just present the method, because if I just present the method, it takes me, I could do it in 20 minutes, right? They're going to look at NFP as on the table with, okay, we got NFP, we got the pill, the patch, the shot, the ring, withdrawal, sterilization, and they're not going to really understand its value. So I do teach about the meaning of the marital act, the sacrament of matrimony, and so many other things when teaching engaged couples, and it's so thrilling. This information is so exciting, and to see them get excited. Our church doesn't just have good news, it's got great news. It's great news to people. And as Archbishop Corleone was saying, very often the couples will say, why didn't I hear about this before? And they get so angry sometimes that they didn't know about it earlier, and yet they've suffered the result of trying to follow the world's way. All right, so in some places, like when we're teaching in, all the, Guatemala or Africa, the cost it's free. Okay, it just really depends on where it's being taught and the teachers that are teaching. We have Mercedes' book, which is $30 retail. It's a beautiful book. But we also have, when we're teaching the poor, 2 pieces of paper. So it really depends on where we're teaching and who we're teaching. Let's see. Something else I want to mention is that our organization is developing. We've developed a way to get to the 2 most influential people in regards to couples' choices about planning their family. And the media is influential, and family and friends are influential. But the 2 most influential people are the priests and the doctors. Okay, and 99%, probably 99.99999% of the OBGYNs are, trying to get couples to use artificial methods, and they don't tell them anything about this. So we're really thrilled to have found a way to support our priests to share this information. so often, I mean, we can be angry with them. They've been silent for so long, and that doesn't help for us to judge them. What we really need to do is come alongside them and say, you know, how can we help you do this? Because I've spoken at so many deaneries, and these are amazing priests in my diocese that we have in my county, and they're just so wonderful and passionate and orthodox, and they've said, you know, we're with you. We are with you. How do we do this? And our first response was, why are you asking me this question? But through just thinking about it and all of our experience, we developed a way to reach priests and help them and come at them with the attitude of, this is how you do it, and we're here to help you. And that really helps them a lot. And now with the OBGYNs, we developed a way to get into the OBGYN offices so that NFP is represented. We want to convert OBGYNs because Dr. Baggett, who's here today with Guadalupe Medical Center, at some point, he says, you know what? We doctors are getting awful tired of being a plumber for the reproductive system. And I think that doctors often feel like there's no other way. So with the way we've developed, we're giving them another way. We're going in with achieving, and it's going to be like, oh, look, and this works for achieving. Isn't that great? And, oh, you know what? You can use it to postpone too. And so the doctors seeing their patients happy, healthy, and the relationships doing well, hopefully through that will be converted to this way of doing things. So let me see. Did I answer everything? My time's up. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, and for our last one, before we dive into the questions, delight to introduce Sue Eck. She's the Executive Director of the U.S. affiliate of the Billings Ovulation Method. She has been a trainer, supervisor, and teacher of the Billings Method and has traveled for her work to Australia, Europe, Mexico, Canada, and throughout the United States. So welcome, Sue Eck.
I'm just grateful that you all showed up when Janet Smith was our competition. I thought we'd have maybe two. So thank you. I really appreciate that on behalf of all of us, I'm sure. So typically our teachers will present 2 PowerPoints over the course of 2 classes, and then the follow-ups are about 20 to 30 minutes long, and most couples are finished after 4 to 6 follow-ups. So we really believe in keeping the methods simple. In fact, a PowerPoint doesn't even need to be used because an Australian teacher developed the slide rule where we can explain the method very simply and the variations in the cycle using the slide rule. And if any of you have questions about the rules, you're welcome to come by our table. We're sharing with TeenStar. Be happy to give you a crash course. Typically, from what I'm hearing among the teachers in the U.S., they charge about $135 as a package price, but we don't tell our teachers how much to charge, so couples who want to learn would have to ask the individual teachers what they charge. We offer the method in the United States in both English and Spanish, and we offer teacher trainings in English and Spanish as well. Our method was developed back in the 1950s, 1953 to be exact is when it started. Dr. John Billings was a neurologist in Melbourne, Australia, and his pastor, who came from a long line of medical doctors, approached him and asked him if he would please come up with something more effective than the rhythm method. And he said, well, I'm a neurologist, brain guy. I don't know, does that really make sense? Can't you find an OBGYN? And his pastor, Father Maurice Katarinich, said, no, you'll be more objective. Why don't you just see what you can come up with? And so he said, okay, I'll give it 3 months. He had a busy medical practice and several children, and so it evolved into now we're way over 50 years of ongoing teaching in over 100 countries around the world. In Australia, they've done 850,000 hormonal assays plus that confirm the 4 simple rules of the Billings method are correct. And it's been just such a gift to be able to share this information to women around the world through this. I mean, it's it's very scientifically sound. When that number of hormonal assays have been done and they confirm the 4 rules are correct, I mean, that's, you don't get much better than that. We do have an app. There are a couple of apps. Of course, we all know there are apps available, and the trend is to make it an app for any natural method without any of the research. But at our table, I have business cards for nfpcharting.com, and that reflects the basic Billings chart, which can be used on the iPhone, iPad, the Droid, personal computer. It's been a great help for our supervised practicums when a teacher is being followed remotely by a supervisor, so his or her couples can put their chart online, and then with the permission of that user couple, the supervisor and the teacher can view what they've charted. And that's available in a couple of different languages, and senior trainers and physicians can also access those charts as needed to consult. We're unique in that we don't show pictures of the mucus. The Billings felt very strongly about that because the research showed that the woman can identify her own patterns of fertility and infertility without being told what they will or will not see. And our method is based primarily on sensation at the vulva, and that's based on the research of Dr. Erik Odeblad of Sweden. He did extensive research on cervical mucus and identified the various types of mucus that are present during specific times of the fertile phase and before and after the fertile phase begins. So he discovered how am I doing? Okay, good. So there's a specific mucus, it's called the G- mucus, that blocks sperm from entering before the fertile phase begins, and that's what we call the basic infertile pattern. Once a woman notices a change in sensation, that tells us the plug is starting to dissolve and fertility has begun, and then a different type of mucus is produced. So there are, probably 5 types of mucus now that he has identified. 5, no, more like 6 or 7. The slippery mucus slippery sensation happens very close to the time of ovulation, and that's also caused by a specific type of mucus. There's a L mucus that traps poor quality sperm into place, allowing the best quality sperm to reach the egg. So it's all so fascinating. And we don't go through all of this with our couples who use the method, but we go into it during our teacher training so that our teachers understand the science behind what we teach and why we teach it. And our peak day was developed, the term peak day was coined by Dr. John Billings, and now any viable method of natural family planning has its own peak day. And they vary quite a bit, but we know from nearly 1 million hormonal assays that ovulation will not occur before our peak day, but in most cases will occur on peak day and sometimes a day or 2 after. So it's all very scientific, but we try to keep it simple for the couples and the women especially. I think that pretty much covers. Our teacher trainings are over a long weekend. We offer 25 CMEs for physicians, 25 CNEs for nurses. So that's been a big help. And we offer webinars to update our teachers and for our membership so they can learn more in different languages as well. So I think that's it. Am I okay with time? Oh, okay. Let's see. No, I'll leave time for questions. Better than trying to fill in 3 minutes.
So again, we have 4 of the pioneering methods, and definitely all of us give credit to Billings as being the one with Dr. Billings and his wife, Evelyn?
Dr.
Lynn.
Billings,
Okay. Of just being that starting point and where so much of the science came from. And it's just beautiful seeing the whole spectrum of how all the methods have really listened to Humanae Vitae and tried to reach out in their way. And each comes with a little bit different approach, but it's all the same physiology, and it's all, as we all know, it's got nuances, but it's the same physiology. And so in each one, it sounds like all of you do reach out to other countries, do long distance training as well. And so when I gave the clergy day yesterday, one of the priests asked, you know, it's hard to make them mandate to have natural family planning before marriage prep because he lives in a place where there's not enough teachers, and so he doesn't. And it was like, well, wait, there's always, but I didn't have a like, oh, check this app, or I needed the tools. I gave him the CNFP website, of course, because then that has all of the members, the teachers that are members, their information is there, as well as kind of all the key websites for all of your methods. But it's just so good to hear the reinforcement that you have an app that they can train themselves. So I think all of us agree face-to-face means so much, but we need to be able to reach everybody. So there's never an excuse of, oh, there's not a teacher available. And so it's really, it was a delight to hear just the whole spectrum of, I really think we can have the whole world covered, you know, with all of the methods. So I want to open it up to questions of your thoughts on the different methods. Questions? Oh, yes.
I have
Okay.
a comment on something you said, and I can project my voice here, I think. I have heard priests say that they're uncomfortable, perhaps, for the recording. We'll do it. I've talked to priests all the time. I'm every week talking to priests, calling them about this issue and asking them if they're including natural family planning in their marriage prep. That's the key question I ask, and that always opens up a huge conversation. I also introduce myself as an instructor at your service, and that has a big impact. But not requiring or including, nicer word, natural family planning in marriage prep is like making the consecration an elective in seminary. What would that be like for our church? If the priest could say, well, I don't really want to take that class, or if it wasn't included in their priest formation, okay? It's that important for people to know how to plan their families morally and naturally. So, and making it an alternate, you know, an option is like asking people to get an elective root canal, all right? Because most people don't want to look at this issue. It's like a horror to really look at it because most people have been catechized by the world. So, and they don't really know what they're getting into. And in terms of teachers, a lot of teachers become inactive due to the fact that they don't have anybody to teach. And so when priests start referring couples, we will start having more teachers, and teachers will want to teach.
Since we're talking about, I don't want to take time from the questions, but I do have 3 minutes left, I think. So I do want to just mention on the topic of priests that we have developed a curriculum for seminaries, and we have seminary programs at Kenrick Glennon Seminary, at St. Charles Borromeo, and at the Josephinum. And the men have actually about 12 to 15 hours of presentations about fertility care and Napa technology. And these men come in with a heart for the faith, but they leave with a passion for how they can help women and couples. So we're very interested in having that seminary program throughout the world. We're actually going to start it in Mexico, and there are other areas of the United States interested. So that is one of our issues for dealing with priests that's been so helpful. Linacre Quarterly will be publishing our results in November about this seminary program because we did pre and post surveys to measure the growth of the men as they come to this. You mentioned different countries, and I also thought it was very interesting that one of our educators was just in Egypt with an on-site visit, which is part of our education programs. And so she was teaching a Muslim man who was teaching Muslims all about fertility care, and they were using it exquisitely without missing a beat. So when you talk about other countries, this is being used in at least 6 continents, Creighton model. And we have providers who are giving absolutely the same education as American women get about this, because we believe so much in the respect for women and the dignity of women. And regardless of their educational economic background, we believe that they can learn the beauty of this fertility.
Yeah, so it certainly does empower us. If you'd like to go ahead.
Diane, you mentioned the acronym SPICE. I didn't quite get all the, I just got spiritual, physical, and what's the rest?
Yes, so SPICE.
Thank you. We have a view of human sexuality as an integration of these 5 issues. SPICE is the acronym, and that stands, the S is for spiritual, that we are spiritual in our sexuality. P is for physical. I is for intellectual. C is for creative, communicative. And E is emotional. And because we live in a society that's so countercultural to these beliefs, we believe that it's so important to have this one-on-one communication with our clients about this whole area of sexuality. Because if you take the person who is coming to learn a method and they're coming off of contraception, and we are encouraging them to express their love to one another in non-genital forms on their days of fertility if they are choosing to avoid a pregnancy, it's very important for them to have a foundational help of how they can do this. These couples have never heard of spice sexuality. You say, what is sexuality? And their definition is, well, it's sex. Well, you know, we have the opportunity to say, well, do you realize it's actually broader than that? We're sexual beings in all that we do. So that is I think it's a very unique part of what we do. And in having the individual one-on-one follow-ups, we were able to ask leading questions and listen to people so they can express their views on this and receive the help that we need. Sometimes those leading questions give us answers that we might be a little surprised with, but that gives us an opportunity for pastoral counseling and sometimes appropriate referrals for spiritual counseling about chastity in their marriage.
Thank you. Sue, you mentioned the 4 simple rules of the Billings method. Are you able to describe those, or is it?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
I brought my slide rule so I could do that. So the first rule is to avoid intercourse on days of heavy menstrual bleeding. Maybe I should stand up. This is all for postponing pregnancy. The second early day rule. No, I think I'm okay. Oh, yeah, why don't you? Okay, so the second early day rule is if a woman has a basic infertile pattern, alternate evenings are available during those times. And it's very strict alternate evenings, not 2 evenings in a row or an evening and a morning, but alternate evenings. And then when there's a change to fertility, the couple waits. And if the fertile phase leads to peak day, they abstain for 3 days after peak, and on the 4th day after, they can resume intercourse. Our peak day is defined with 3 very specific requirements, and they have to happen in this order or it cannot be peak day, and that's based on all those hormonal assays. So there has to be a changing, developing pattern. That's 1. Ending in slippery, followed by a definite change. So if any of those have not happened, it's not peak. And if they have not happened in that order, it's not peak. So we have we're very confident in identifying the time of ovulation based on peak day and all, nearly, well, over 850,000 hormonal assays. So very simple. So 1, 2, 3, and the peak day is the 4th, but we call it the peak rule. So then this demonstrates nicely that women who are breastfeeding or maybe perimenopausal, as their cycles lengthen or shorten, they just simply keep applying the rules. So if they have a change in the BIP, either with fertility or spotting, and the BIP returns, they take it 1 day at a time and wait to see what's going to happen. Anybody have questions about the rules? Go ahead.
What was the last one of number 4?
It's actually called the peak rule, and so you wait until the 4th day after peak, and then any time is available for intercourse.
You said changing, developing pattern, slippery.
Ending in slippery. So first one is changing, developing pattern. 2 is ending in slippery. And then the 3rd requirement is a definite change. So we know that the definite change is important because there's something called the pockets of Shaw. Again, this is research by Dr. Odeblad of Sweden. Other methods they don't incorporate the knowledge of the pockets of Shaw. It's unique to us. The pockets of Shaw are activated at the time of ovulation, and progesterone is released. and there's a drying effect of the mucus. So there has to be that definite change in order for us to know that ovulation has occurred, which in turn tells us the pockets of Shah have been activated to cause the change in sensation. Yeah, good question.
Yeah. Yes, come up to the mic.
I wanted to speak to, is it Casey? Casey, I'm Suzanne Spence with Teen Star, and we're teaching fertility literacy to teenagers. And we ask the same question, what do you need to have a baby? And they always answer sperm and eggs. So I love the way you brought in the mucus and said that's the third necessary ingredient, which I do with our students. And one of our students actually pointed out that sperm requires semen. It can't live in a vacuum. So the men also have an essential fluid necessary for conception, as do the women. And I think that sort of equalizes the whole thing. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you so much.
Good point. I'm going to use that from now on.
Okay. My question is for Diane. Yeah, right. How does the Cretan model help couples with infertility?
How do couples with infertility
Yes.
use the Creighton model? Pardon?
How does it help couples with infertility?
Yes. Thank you. It's a really important point that I'm glad you brought up, because even in our own program in St. Louis, I noticed that probably a third of our couples are coming with infertility. So the Creighton model system is it's a precise indicator of the fertility and infertility times of the cycle. In fact, it's so precise that the mucus cycle, which is the time of fertility, there's a scoring calculation to help us know if somebody is dealing with normal fertility or challenged fertility. So for couples with infertility, about 40%, 20 to 40%, can become pregnant just by the introductory session without any follow-ups, just by learning about their body and selecting to have intercourse on their fertile days. So that's about 20 to 40%. But if you add the NAPRO technology, which is the medical approach based on the Creighton model system to this, where physicians analyze the tracking system that these women chart with their Creighton model system, they order testing, diagnostic testing according to the chart, and then they actually plan some of their treatments according to the chart. The success rate can be up to 80% effective to achieve a pregnancy, which is almost 3 times more effective than in vitro fertilization. We have no frozen little babies. We have preserved the intimacy of marital intercourse and the purity of that. So it's completely based on our Catholic values and more effective than anything else in the field. So the fantastic thing about this is physicians can actually practice medicine and OBGYN in dealing with their couples with infertility as well as other women, and they can do this in a moral way based on their own consciences. I work at Mercy Hospital in St. Louis, and we have a residency program. This program has become known around the country for a place that medical students can actually come to the residency and practice medicine according to their faith. And so they work with physicians in this whole area of infertility to learn these NAPRO technology techniques. And that word stands for natural procreative technology, as opposed to the artificial reproductive technologies. So it's a really important area of infertility. Our clientele will be couples with infertility. They will be couples of normal fertility. They will be teenagers who have a medical issue and need NAPRO technology. They will be religious sisters. I've taught maybe between 25 and 30 nuns or consecrated women who come just to learn about their bodies and have a medical approach. One really quick story was a woman who called me. Her daughter was a nun in a cloister, and she'd been on birth control pills for 10 years because of the issues in her reproductive system. And her mother found out about NAPRO technology, read something that was published in our local diocesan newspaper, called me. She said, "Could you help my daughter?" And we're like, "Absolutely." So one of our nurses taught her through the cloister, through the screen. and that woman was able to get off the birth control pill to get the medical treatment she needed. So we have hundreds or thousands of stories like that. The medical component is so incredibly important. And for the couples with infertility who are suffering so much, just this week, one of my clients is due to have a baby, 6 or 7 years infertility. Her obstetrician told her, there's nothing wrong with you. Don't know why you're not getting pregnant. So she went to one of our Napa technology doctors. She has 3 medical conditions, has had surgery, achieved 1 pregnancy, unfortunately miscarried, but now after 7 years has a sustainable pregnancy, and she's due in about a week. And there is story after story like that, and it is so heartwarming because the cross of infertility is a huge cross for couples to carry, and they really, really need the help of people who are providing this natural system, but also the doctors who will practice according to this. We do have a real quick part of Creighton Model Education is a program for physicians, and just in April when I was teaching in Omaha, we had 51 physicians from 17 countries. And this program is a 6-month educational program for physicians. They work with Dr. Hilders. He also has a fellowship program for reproductive, surgical, and medical techniques. There are about 20, I've lost track, maybe 25, 26, 25, thank you, fellows, who practice reproductive medicine with these amazing techniques, pelvic reconstruction, helping people achieve a pregnancy in marvelous ways that, you know, mainstream OB-GYN medicine may not be providing. So it's very exciting to be able to help our clients with infertility.
Just quickly, I wanted to say that we also get 80% success rate in achieving pregnancy in the first couple of cycles of trying.
My name's Susan McConaughey, and I'm a fertility care practitioner, and I've been one for 38 years for the Creighton model. And I had a few things to say. I want to say thank you to every single person up here on this panel, for your gift of yourself to really be with this important issue of how families come into the world and how couples relate to each other and how we relate to our own bodies. There couldn't be anything more important than what you're doing. I think it's just so beautiful. And I know we have the different methods, and I'm really excited about, but I'm excited about everything that everybody is doing, and I don't think anybody should feel less than because their method doesn't do this or this method doesn't do that. But I wanted just to say one thing about what Dr. John and Lynn Billings said originally in Australia was that, if you just you getting up there showing that slide rule now, that can be 75% effective for couples that's what we need to curb world population is we don't need 100%. We might get 99% or 95%, but anyway.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I have something to say.
Actually, our method is 99.5+% effective in postponing pregnancy, and that's based on studies in China and worldwide.
I know.
I'm not sure about the 75. Are you talking about just
I'm just
teaching?
saying over the back
Okay.
fence if I tell you about my cycle.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
the one thing I wanted to say about the SPICE program is I was teaching teenagers when my 4 daughters were in high school, and I was teaching them SPICE, that they had to incorporate SPICE as an individual first before they could relate to another person. I mean, that model is so expandable. And then when I was going through hard times with my ex-husband, we used to use SPICE when we get together and talk, do check-ins every week or two. And it just like, okay, well, how am I spiritually? How am I physically? How are you doing with your life? It's just it's an amazing model. And I really encourage everyone to think about that as a way to communicate wholeness in our relationships. And there was one other thing I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was. But I'll end on that. Thanks.
We have 2 more minutes, and so I know that there's been some burning. So if anybody wants to wrap up something real quick, I know you will definitely have the mic. So go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say that we too have seen the same kind of success in terms of achieving pregnancy, which is really exciting, as 15 to 20% of couples today struggle with infertility due to the effects of artificial birth control. And we just are publishing a new study that showed 81.4% effectiveness for couples trying at least a year unsuccessfully to get pregnant, some trying up to 12 years. And there were 4 areas that we addressed. 1, fertility information, which is huge. 2 is diet, nutrition. That is so enormous when it comes to healthy fertility. 3, stress. And 4, gain or lose weight. So based on those 4 areas, we were able to help couples to achieve pregnancy 81.48%. So another thing I want to point out is that we really don't need to be curbing population. We are in a very serious situation where many of the world's countries are below replacement level. In the United States, it's now 1.8. 2 years ago, we looked at population. It was 1.84, and now it's at 1.8. So many countries are below replacement, and it's really an emergency. We need to encourage people to actually have children.
Okay. I want to ask you just to, in terms of the research and publications, there is a study of the effectiveness of Creighton model system published in the Journal of Reproductive Medicine, but there's a 17-center use effectiveness study now going on across the country of the United States and Canada. So that is in process. 1 paper's been published. There will be multiple papers on this, which will give more of the effectiveness of Creighton model system. And fortunately, it's matching what we had learned many years ago in the early publications. But in closing, what I would like to say is that I think that this work is the most wonderful work in the world. And I feel so honored to be able to represent this and to be able to bring this to couples. I often say I'm the luckiest woman in the world. My husband, Tom's over here, accompanies me to everything and is so supportive and helpful, as well as our kids, who are all grown now. But people say, well, you've spent so much time in this work. Has it taken you away from family? And I think it's only enhanced our families. So I feel like the luckiest woman in the world, being able to do work that I'm passionate about, as well as having this, wonderful vocation of marriage. So please keep optimistic and upbeat about this whole system. All of us working hard to help people live their faith and also have the best reproductive medicine that they can have from my perspective. Did you want to say something closing?
Because actually, one of the things that couple to couple is so unique at is it always teaches as a couple. And I know the other ones probably sometimes include men, but it's not as part of the package as it is couple to couple. So I really was wondering how, just a closing thought of how important that is for talking man to man.
And one of the things that we really stress in our classes is trying to engage the man. It's not her fertility, it's our fertility. And, even though obviously, the woman still has to do the bulk of the heavy lifting with the mucus checks and all of that, but there are ways that men can be supportive and help. When we were using it, I would be the one to get up and, get the thermometer and give it to Pam and have her take her temperature and then chart it. And I think most importantly, maybe what we try to communicate to our couples is it's that you're having a constant dialogue, if you will, about your fertility, because every time when you might think about making love or somebody's passionate about wanting to do that, you really have a conversation. Where are we? Is this a time when we really are okay if we do get pregnant, or is it a time when maybe due to circumstances we need to postpone that? And it just creates this dialogue. And one of the things we like to say is, that in itself enhances your marriage. Which is, I think, probably the main reason the divorce rate for NFP using couples is so much lower. But second is, if you can talk about mucus, you can talk about anything.
And one of the things, again, with me doing the clergy day yesterday, you know, there's the kind of the three parties, you had mentioned. There's the physicians, the priests, the teachers surrounding that couple. And it's so easy to point the blame if the priest doesn't refer enough, or the priests say, oh, there's not enough teachers. And when I'm training physicians, I go, oh, women don't want that. And if I move from here, who's going to train them? And let alone any religious aspect, because obviously I teach in a secular setting. So it's really that everybody has to help build, you know, this beautiful mansion together. We all have our piece to do, and we need to encourage the other ones, not be pointing the finger, but really come together as a team. All of us do it as hard. This was delightful for me. I hope everyone else found it really good, but I loved the collaboration and just hearing all the different facets. There's so many ways to teach this beautiful physiology that God gave us. Thank you, all of you, so much. Really appreciate it.